You feel like heaven, Korean CEO gasps on wedding night with his untouched African bride. Rain tapped gently against the glass walls of the Kong Group's top-floor boardroom, turning Seoul into a pale watercolor. The room was silent except for the hum of the city beneath them, a restless giant that never seemed to sleep. Kang Min-jae sat at the head of the long polished table, a fountain pen poised between his fingers. He was a man known for control, every expression measured, every word calculated. Yet today, a faint tension pulled at the corners of his eyes. Before him lay a stack of documents, their meaning heavier than their weight. International Strategic Marriage Agreement. Kong Group X Dubai Holdings. The words stared back at him like a challenge. His father, Chairman Kong, stood near the window, arms crossed behind his back. He didn't look at Min-jae, only at the city as though he alone had built it. It's time, the chairman said. Sigh. This union secures our expansion into Africa. Dubai Holdings will not wait forever. I understand the business, Min-jae replied quietly. But marriage. His voice carried a bitterness he didn't bother to mask. To a woman I've never met? His father finally turned. You are a CEO first, a son second, and a man last. He nodded at the papers. Do what must be done. Before Min-jae could respond, the double doors opened and a presence seemed to shift in the room. Daniel Dubé entered, tall, dignified, and carrying the calm authority of a man who negotiated national crises for breakfast. His suit was simple, but his posture was that of someone who commanded respect without ever asking for it. Min-jae stood automatically. Mr. Dubé. CEO Kong, Daniel greeted, offering a polite nod. His deep voice filled the room with quiet weight. I trust the terms have been explained to you. Yes. Min-jae hesitated. Though some terms are unusual. Daniel's smile was small, knowing. Arranged marriages are unusual only to those who haven't seen how effective they are. He stepped closer to the table, studying Min-jae not with suspicion but with curiosity. It is natural to be uncertain. Min-jae tensed. Uncertain is not the word. No, Daniel agreed softly. The word is afraid. The remark struck like a blade disguised as silk. The executives shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke to Min-jae that way, not board members, not shareholders, not even his father. But Daniel Dubé did. Min-jae straightened, jaw tight. I'm not afraid. Then prove it, Daniel replied and slid a small photo across the table. Min-jae didn't mean to pick it up, but his fingers betrayed him. In the picture, a young woman laughed at something off camera. Sunlight spilled across her skin, turning it warm and golden. Her scarf, a vivid swirl of color, framed her face like a crown. Her eyes shone with sincerity, life, and something else. Something bright. Something real. This is my daughter. Ayanda, Daniel said. She is strong. Educated. Principled. She does not bend easily, neither for me nor for you. Treat her as an equal and she will astonish you. Underestimate her and she will humble you. Min-jae set the photo down more carefully than he meant to. Why her? He asked. You could have chosen any number of alliances. Because Ayanda is not an asset, Daniel replied. She is the only person I trust with my legacy, and I need someone equally strong to stand with her. His gaze sharpened. Are you such a man, Min-jae? The challenge ignited something quiet and stubborn inside Min-jae. He took a slow breath, lowered his eyes to the contract and finally put pen to paper. The sound of the signature, small, final, echoed in his chest. When he looked up, Daniel's face showed neither triumph nor relief. Only respect. Good, Daniel said. Then we begin. The elevator doors closed behind Min-jae as he left the meeting. For the first time in years, the silence inside a room felt too loud. He loosened his tie, leaning against the cool metal wall. A marriage. A stranger. A responsibility he never asked for. But he would shoulder it. He always did. Yet, as the elevator descended, he found himself reaching into his pocket. The photograph. Ayanda. A woman who looked like she carried her own son. He stared at her face longer than he intended. Half a world away, Johannesburg basked in late afternoon warmth as crowds flowed through OR Tambo International Airport. The air smelled of spice, new journeys, and distant rain. Ayanda Dubé stood near the departure gates, hands folded in front of her luggage. She had her father's calm eyes, her mother's bright smile, and her own quiet strength. You're very quiet, her mother said, gently adjusting the deep blue scarf tied around Ayanda's hair. Ayanda smiled faintly. I'm going to another continent, to marry a man I've never met. Should I be loud? Her brother Sia laughed and pulled her into a fierce hug. If he doesn't treat you right, I'll fly to Korea myself. Ayanda snorted. I'll protect myself, thank you very much. Her father stepped forward last. No speech, no dramatics. Just a long, steady look into his daughter's eyes. You were born from strength, he said. Carry it with you. And remember, this marriage may be a contract between families, but what you become within it is entirely yours. Ayanda swallowed, the weight and comfort of his words settling over her. She turned toward her gate as the boarding call echoed overhead. Her heart pulsed once strong. A stranger. A future she did not choose. A destiny she would meet head-on. As she walked forward, she whispered to herself, Kang Min-jae, who are you? And at that very moment, in Seoul, a man looked out over the darkened city, her photograph still in his hand. Ayanda Dubé, he murmured into the silence. What kind of woman are you? The morning Seoul welcomed Ayanda was crisp and pale, the early sun stretching shyly over the Han River as if it too was curious about the new arrival. The city was already awake, traffic humming, vendors setting up stalls, and sleek black cars gliding through the airport roads. Inside Incheon International Airport, Kang Min-jae stood near the arrivals area, hands in the pockets of his tailored coat. Two discreet bodyguards hovered near him, but he barely noticed them. His attention was fixed on the automatic doors where passengers spilled out like waves. He checked his watch. She would be out any moment. A marriage he hadn't chosen. A woman he had never spoken to. And yet, some stubborn part of him insisted on being here in person. Sir, one bodyguard murmured, we can wait closer. No, Min-jae said quickly, more sharply than intended. He exhaled. I'm fine here. The truth was, he didn't know how he wanted to meet her. Formally? Politely? Coldly? He had spent years building walls so high that even he couldn't see over them anymore. Then the doors slid open again, and she stepped into Seoul. Ayanda paused at the threshold, suitcase in hand, and tilted her head as though absorbing the entire airport in one breath. The overhead lights cast a soft glow on her deep complexion, highlighting the gentle angles of her face. Her hair was braided neatly and pulled back, adorned with subtle accents of gold. Her posture was calm but alert, like someone who had walked into stranger worlds and survived them all. For a moment, everything around Min-jae quieted. The crowds blurred. The airport lights softened. His chest tightened, surprised by the stillness she brought with her. She's not what I expected. Ayanda scanned the crowd, searching. When their eyes finally met, something clicked, soft but undeniable. She approached with a composed smile, her long coat flowing behind her. Min-jae froze, then straightened as though a switch had been flipped in his spine. Mr. Kang, she asked. Her voice was warm, melodic, carrying the faint cadence of someone who knew how to speak with confidence without arrogance. He bowed stiffly. Too fast. Too low. Ayanda blinked, startled. Then, when he tried to offer a handshake at the same time, their movements tangled awkwardly, her hand going one way, his body going another. It was graceless, painfully so. Ayanda bit her lower lip to stop a laugh. Not mockery, just amusement. It's okay, she said, her smile blossoming. We'll figure it out together. Together. The word settled somewhere unexpectedly deep in him. Welcome to South Korea, Min-jae managed, though his voice felt too formal for the moment. I hope your flight was comfortable. It was long, Ayanda admitted, but I'm here now. Simple words, but they held more bravery than he expected. He gestured toward the exit. The car is waiting. As they walked, people turned to look at them, some curious, some surprised, some simply admiring the striking pair they formed. Ayanda walked with the kind of effortless grace that drew attention without demanding it. At the car, Min-jae quickly moved to open the door for her, beating the bodyguard by a fraction of a second. Ayanda raised her eyebrows, pleased, maybe impressed, but she said nothing. She simply slid into the seat with quiet elegance. Min-jae joined her on the other side. The door shut, sealing them inside a pocket of muted luxury and soft classical music. For a few seconds neither spoke. Ayanda looked out the window as the city sped by, neon signs, cherry blossom trees bare in the winter air, people bundled in coats. Her eyes softened with wonder. It's beautiful, she whispered. Min-jae studied her profile, the curve of her cheek, the strength in the line of her jaw. You've been here before? No, she said. But I've always wanted to travel the world. I just didn't imagine Korea would be my first stop. There was nothing accusatory in her tone. No bitterness. Just honesty. Min-jae cleared his throat, suddenly aware of the tight feeling in his chest. I hope it becomes a place you can be comfortable. Ayanda turned to look at him fully then. Really look. Her gaze was searching but not judging. I believe comfort is something two people build, she said softly. And we have time. He wasn't sure why, but heat crept up the back of his neck. The car glided onto the main highway. So, Ayanda said suddenly, breaking the silence, do you always meet your arranged bride at the airport yourself? Minjae choked, on his own breath. Ayanda burst into laughter, warm and bright and startlingly contagious in the enclosed space. Relax, she said, wiping a tear from her eye. I'm joking. He stared at her, disarmed, confused, and something he rarely was, flustered. Ayanda leaned back against the seat, still smiling. You're different from what I imagined, she admitted. He blinked. In what way? I thought you would be colder. I am cold, he insisted reflexively. She shook her head gently. No, you're guarded. But not cold. He didn't respond. Couldn't. And so they sat together, in a car moving through a foreign city for her and a foreign situation for him. Two strangers bound by a contract yet connected by something quietly shifting in the air between them. A beginning neither of them expected. But a beginning nonetheless. The day of the wedding dawned crisp and pale, the sky brushed with soft winter blue. Seoul hummed quietly beneath the morning light, as though holding its breath for what was to come. Ayanda woke early in the guest suite of the Kang family estate, a place full of polished stone, quiet hallways and traditions she did not yet understand. She sat on the edge of the bed, fingers tapping nervously on her knees. Today she would become someone's wife. A stranger's wife. She took a slow breath and whispered to herself in Zulu, Thula and Thlizio, quiet heart. A knock sounded at the door. When she opened it, a small army of women from the wedding team stood ready, hairstylists, hanbok specialists, makeup artists. Their eyes widened slightly, not with judgment but with admiration. Ayanda Sai, the lead stylist, said kindly, please allow us. Ayanda nodded and stepped aside. Within an hour she was dressed in a custom hanbok unlike anything she had ever imagined. Deep sapphire blue and gold embroidery that shimmered like morning sun on ocean water. The wide skirt swayed gracefully as she moved. The Giagari jacket accentuated her shoulders. She looked like she belonged to two worlds at once, South African roots wrapped in Korean tradition. When she saw her reflection, her breath caught. Her dark skin glowed against the rich colors. Her braids had been tucked into an elegant updo adorned with delicate golden pins. Is this truly me? She wondered. Her mother would have cried. Her father would have smiled quietly. Her brother would have taken 100 pictures. But here she stood alone. Meanwhile, across the estate, Minjae stared at his own reflection, adjusting the ceremonial men's hanbok he had worn only once before. The navy silk framed his shoulders, giving him an air of solemn nobility. But today the fabric felt heavier, tighter. His father entered without knocking. Are you ready? Chairman Kang asked. I'm dressed, Minjae replied. Ready is different. His father sighed. This alliance ensures our company's future. Your personal feelings. I know. He straightened. Let's go. But as they walked, Minjae's mind replayed flashes of Ayanda's face at the airport. Her bright smile, her unshakable poise, the way she had said together. Maybe this wouldn't be a cage after all. The ceremony hall. The hall glowed with soft lantern light, casting warm halos across the lacquered tables and traditional screens painted with mountains and cranes. Guests filled the room, executives, diplomats, family allies. Some curious, others skeptical, all whispering. The murmur shifted the moment Ayanda entered. Gasps rippled across the hall. She walked with quiet confidence, her steps steady despite the dozen eyes drinking her in. Her hanbok flowed like water behind her, catching the light in waves of blue and gold. Minjae's breath hitched. He had seen her only once before, but now she looked extraordinary. Ayanda's eyes met his across the room, and for a heartbeat, the world dulled into stillness. Not romantic. Not electric. Just recognition. Two strangers stepping onto a bridge neither asked for. She reached him, and as tradition dictated, they bowed to one another. Ayanda's bow was graceful, full of respect. Minjae's was slightly deeper, an instinctive sign of apology he didn't fully understand. When she offered her hand for the first vow ritual, he hesitated, but only for a second. His palm slid against hers, warm and soft. A jolt shot up his arm. Minjae stiffened visibly. Ayanda's lashes fluttered in surprise. He gripped her hand too sharply, released too quickly. Relax, she whispered, a small smile curving her lips. I don't bite. Minjae nearly choked. The officiant pretended not to notice, though several guests stifled chuckles behind folded fans. The rituals begin. They performed the Paibik ceremony, an ancient wedding rite symbolizing respect and unity. Ayanda followed each instruction with humble grace, bowing to Minjae's parents as she had practiced. Chairman Kong studied her with unreadable eyes. Madame Kong, however, softened. "Beautiful girl," she murmured to herself. Then came the moment when the bride and groom shared their first symbolic drink. Minjae lifted the cup first. Ayanda's fingers brushed his as she accepted it, and again he froze, something tight and unfamiliar rising in his chest. Her touch was gentle, steadying. They sipped from opposite sides of the cup. Guests applauded. For the first time since the wedding began, Minjae allowed himself to exhale. After the ceremony, the newlyweds were guided behind a screen for a private moment before their families joined them. It was custom, meant to give them a breath, a moment to acknowledge one another not as symbols but as people. The silence felt thick enough to touch. Ayanda adjusted her skirt. "You did well," she said lightly. "For someone who claims to be cold." His eyes snapped to hers. "I never said." "Oh, you definitely act like it." He stared, then laughed. A small, startled laugh that sounded foreign even to his own ears. "I'm sorry," he said. "If I seemed distant." "You seemed human," she replied. "Nothing wrong with that." Minjae blinked. No one spoke to him like that, simply, openly, without agenda. She was different. Utterly, disarmingly different. Ayanda smiled, and for the first time since the contract was signed, Minjae felt something warm flicker beneath his ribs. Maybe this beginning wouldn't be so unbearable. They stepped out from behind the screen. Two strangers, now bound by tradition, contract, and something new beginning to simmer quietly in the space between them. The penthouse was quiet when they arrived. Too quiet. The elevator opened directly into a vast living space filled with soft lighting, tall windows, and a breathtaking view of Seoul, thousands of city lights flickering like distant stars against the velvet night. It should have felt grand, impressive, luxurious. Instead, it felt like a museum. Ayanda stepped in slowly, taking in the space that was now, officially, hers too. The silence pressed around them like padded walls. Minjae stood behind her, hands clasped behind his back, shoulders unnaturally stiff. He swallowed as though his throat were dry sand. Neither one of them spoke. This was the wedding night, the moment everyone whispered about, teased about, expected things from. The moment stories were always exaggerated, laughed over, blush-inducing. But here, standing across the glossy floor from one another, there was no laughter, no teasing. Only a tension so quiet it felt fragile. Ayanda cleared her throat. "Your home is beautiful." "It's just a house," Minjae said too quickly as though correcting himself. "You can change it. Any part of it. If you want." She turned toward him, surprised. "Thank you." He nodded, but his eyes avoided hers as he walked toward the minibar and poured himself a glass of water. His fingers trembled, not much but enough for Ayanda to notice. He was nervous. The great CEO Kang Minjae, nervous. The thought softened her heart. She moved toward the windows, her steps slow, admiring the city stretching endlessly below them. "You can see everything from up here," she murmured. Minjae lifted his gaze toward her. "It's good for thinking." "Do you think often?" she teased. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Too much." A silence settled between them again, this time gentler, warmer. A silence that didn't demand anything. Ayanda turned from the window and faced him fully. Her voice was soft. "Minjae, I know tonight is supposed to mean something. But it doesn't have to, not if we're not ready." He inhaled sharply. I know. And I don't expect, I'm not." He stopped, flustered. He tried again. "Ayanda, I don't want you to feel pressured. Ever." Her eyes warmed. "Good. Because neither of us chose this. We can take our time." The air between them loosened, like a knot finally beginning to untangle. Ayanda reached up to remove one of the heavy golden hairpins holding her hair. It snagged slightly, and without thinking, Minjae stepped toward her. "Here, let me help." She froze. He froze. They were suddenly inches apart. Her breath brushed his skin. Minjae lifted his hands toward her hair, hesitating. "May I?" Ayanda nodded once. His fingers brushed her hair, gentle, careful, reverent. The hairpin slid free with a soft metallic click. Her hair loosened, a few strands falling along her cheek. And then, the moment it happened, his fingers grazed her neck. Soft, warm, alive. Min-jae gasped. It wasn't loud. It wasn't exaggerated. It was quiet, barely audible, but full of startled wonder, as though a pulse had shot through him from that single touch. He dropped his hand as if burned. Sorry? Ayanda blinked. Are you okay? His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. Your skin. It's warm. Ayanda raised one eyebrow, amused. Most skin is. No, I mean. He stopped himself, flustered beyond redemption. It felt different. Like. His voice shrank into a whisper. Like heaven. Ayanda's eyes widened. Her lips parted. She stared at him, stunned. You said that out loud, she whispered. Min-jae shut his eyes in pure mortification. I know. Then she laughed. Soft, gentle laughter that filled the room like wind chimes in summer. Not mocking, light, sweet, forgiving. Her laughter eased something inside him. And he found himself smiling. A real smile. She touched his arm lightly. Thank you. For what? He asked, confused. For being honest, she said. And for being nervous. It means you're human. Min-jae looked at her, really looked, and something unfamiliar tugged in his chest. Trust. Or the beginning of it. Ayanda stepped back, giving him space. Let's just talk? Get to know each other? No expectations. He nodded. Yes, talking is good. So they sat on the couch, not too close, not too far. The city lights glowed against their faces as they shared small stories. Her life in Johannesburg, his life in Seoul. She spoke of family, he spoke of pressure. She laughed easily, he learned how to. Minutes turned into hours. And somewhere between stories their shoulders brushed. Not deliberately. Just softly. But neither pulled away. Night deepened. Their voices quieted. Their hearts steadied. When Ayanda finally yawned, Min-jae stood quickly. You should rest. Your room is down the hall. He guided her gently, stopping at the doorway. Ayanda, he said quietly. She turned. Yes. He swallowed. Thank you, for not being afraid of me. Her expression softened in a way that made his chest ache. I'm not afraid, she said. Because you're not the cold man people claim you are. Min-jae blinked, slowly, like someone hearing a truth for the first time. Ayanda stepped into her room, paused, and whispered. Good night, Min-jae. His name had never sounded so warm. Good night, Ayanda, he murmured. The door closed softly, sealing the moment. And as he stood there in the hallway, hands still hovering near the doorframe, Min-jae realized something with a quiet, unshakable certainty. Tonight wasn't the night they became lovers. But it was the night they stopped being strangers. A beginning. A fragile, unexpected beginning. The week after the wedding moved like a slow sunrise, soft, cautious, but steadily brightening. Ayanda woke each morning to the sound of distant traffic and the soft hum of life outside the penthouse. At first she felt the unfamiliarity of it, new country, new home, new husband, but each day the uncertainty thawed little by little. Min-jae was still careful around her. Still composed. Still the polished CEO who chewed silence like it was breakfast. But something had changed. He sought her company. Not in grand gestures. Not in dramatic confessions. But in quiet moments, choosing to exist near her rather than away from her. And for Ayanda, whose life had never been filled with luxury but always with love, those small moments mattered most. A lesson in language. One morning, Ayanda sat on the living room floor sorting through the house manual, trying to understand the controls of the absurdly complicated smart home system. Every button was in Korean. She groaned. What does this one do? Looks like a symbol for, I don't know, a chicken? Min-jae looked over from the kitchen island where he was making coffee. That's for floor heating. Why does it look like a chicken? It's not a chicken. It is definitely a chicken. He set down his mug and walked over, kneeling beside her. It's a traditional pattern representing warmth. It's a chicken. He rubbed his forehead like she was giving him a migraine. But the small smile tugging at his lips betrayed him. Ayanda giggled. Teach me? At least the basics. Min-jae hesitated. Teaching someone Korean meant patience, closeness, and vulnerability, 3 things he wasn't used to giving. But he nodded. Okay, let's start with greetings. She straightened dramatically, folding her hands. I'm ready, Professor Kang. He coughed to hide a laugh. Say, Annyeonghaseyo. Annyeonghaseyo, she repeated proudly. He stared at her, horrified. No, absolutely not. She burst into laughter so loud it echoed through the penthouse. You're doing this on purpose, he said. Maybe. He tried again. Annyeonghaseyo. Anyang, Hasso? He dropped his head in defeat. I regret this decision. Ayanda gently tapped his shoulder. Don't worry. I'll get it. And when I do, you'll be proud. He raised his head slowly, meeting her eyes. I already am, he said. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Ayanda's breath stilled. Her lips parted softly. For a moment, just a moment, the world felt quieter, warmer. Then Minjae blinked quickly, clearing his throat as if he could swallow the moment back into his chest. Anyway, he muttered. Let's continue. But Ayanda saw it. The crack in his armor. The growing softness he couldn't hide. A lesson in chopsticks. Later that week, they visited a traditional restaurant for lunch. A private room had been reserved, to avoid reporters, curious gazes, and the endless camera flashes that followed Minjae anywhere public. The table filled with dishes Ayanda had only seen in pictures. Kimchi, japchae, bulgogi, delicate side dishes arranged like art. Minjae handed her a pair of chopsticks. If you prefer a fork, I can. No, she interrupted. I want to learn. She held the chopsticks like weapons. Or possibly knitting needles. Certainly not the way they were meant to be held. Minjae tried to demonstrate. You hold the bottom chopstick steady, then move the top one. I am holding it steady. It's shaking. It's concentrating. He released a breath that sounded dangerously like laughter. Let me show you. He reached out and gently positioned his hand over hers, adjusting her grip with careful fingers, making sure his touch was light enough not to startle her. But the effect was the opposite. Ayanda's pulse quickened. Minjae's throat bobbed. Their hands were touching. Warm skin on warm skin. Comfortable. Natural. Intimate. For a few seconds, neither breathed. Then Minjae pulled back abruptly. Try now. Ayanda picked up a piece of bulgogi with perfect precision. His jaw dropped. You. Perfect student, she said smugly, popping the piece into her mouth. He shook his head, smiling despite himself. Whispers in the boardroom. A few days later, Ayanda accompanied Minjae to the Kong Group headquarters for the first time. She walked with natural confidence beside him, her posture regal yet gentle. The staff paused to admire her, the elegance of her stride, the softness of her smile, the effortless grace she carried. But not all admiration was pure. As she waited outside the boardroom during a meeting, she overheard two senior board members whispering. A foreign wife? What was the chairman thinking? She doesn't understand Korean culture. How will she represent us? This alliance will cause trouble, mark my words. Ayanda listened quietly. No anger. No tears. Just calm reflection. When the men stepped out, they froze upon seeing her standing there. She offered them a polite, serene smile. Gentlemen, she said softly, please don't whisper about me. If you have concerns, speak them clearly. I'm not fragile. And I'm not here to embarrass your company. I'm here to help strengthen it. Their mouths flapped like caught fish. Minjae, who had just exited the boardroom behind them, heard every word. He stared at Ayanda with something close to awe. That night he couldn't stop replaying it in his head. Her dignity. Her grace. Her strength that didn't shout, but couldn't be ignored. An evening song. That night, when rain tapped against the windows, Ayanda sat on the living room rug, gently unbraiding her hair. She hummed softly under her breath, an old Zulu lullaby her mother used to sing. Minjae entered the room quietly, drawn by the sound. He froze at the doorway. Her voice was soft, tender, weaving through the air like a warm tapestry. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the emotion. Comfort, memory, belonging. Ayanda, he said, unable to look away. Your voice. She looked up, slightly embarrassed. Oh, sorry. I tend to hum when I'm thinking. It makes the world feel less. He paused, searching for the right word. Heavy? Ayanda smiled faintly. Then I'll hum more often. He sat across from her, closer than usual. Close enough to feel her warmth. Close enough to hear her heartbeat, steady as rain. And somewhere deep in both of them, something shifted. Not love, not yet. But the unmistakable beginning of it. Two people. Two cultures. Two hearts slowly learning the rhythm of the other. A bond taking shape, quiet, strong, inevitable. The storm began quietly. A whisper. A rumor. A headline buried beneath bolder ones. But whispers grow. Rumors spread. And headlines rise to the surface like oil in water. Kang Min-jae had survived dozens of corporate crises, but nothing prepared him for the one that arrived without warning on a cold Tuesday morning. The accusation. He was in his office reviewing quarterly plans when his assistant, Ji-hoon, rushed in without knocking, face pale, hands shaking. Sir, he panted, turn on the news. Now. Min-jae frowned but reached for the remote. The screen flashed open to a breaking news banner. Kang Group under investigation. CEO accused of financial misrepresentation. His blood ran cold. The anchor spoke in a grave tone. Sources reveal that documents leaking online show discrepancies in Kang Group's Africa expansion budget, allegedly approved by CEO Kang Min-jae. Discrepancies. That was a polite word. Fraud. That was the word being whispered everywhere else. Min-jae felt the floor shift beneath him. His worst nightmare? Public humiliation. His father's voice echoed in his mind. You are a CEO first. Everything else comes later. Ji-hoon's voice trembled. Sir, those documents, they're fake, aren't they? Yes, Min-jae snapped. But the tightness in his jaw revealed more than anger. It revealed fear. He had no idea who forged them. But someone wanted him destroyed. The wildfire. By noon, reporters swarmed outside the building like hungry birds, flinging questions, accusations, demands. Employees whispered. Board members texted furiously. Social media exploded with theories. #FireKang. #Corrupcio. #Dubai scandal, dragging Ayanda into it, which made his blood boil. Security escorted Min-jae through a back exit. He had faced pressure before. Responsibility. Burdens. But this felt different. This felt personal. The board turns. The board meeting held that afternoon was suffocating. 12 men and women sat around a polished table, some with rehearsed sympathy, others with clearly sharpened knives. Board member CEO cleared his throat. We have to act quickly. Investors are panicking. That evidence is fabricated, Min-jae said, voice steel but eyes shadowed. And you know I would never. Intent doesn't matter, another board member cut in. Public perception does. Min-jae stared at them. You want me to step down? Silence. Confirmation. Chairman Kang didn't speak. Didn't defend him. Didn't look at him. And that, more than any accusation on TV, stabbed through Min-jae's chest. He was alone. Completely alone. Or so he thought. The doors suddenly opened. And Ayanda walked in. Ayanda confronts the board. She entered the room like a gathering storm, elegant, composed, but radiating an energy that pulled every pair of eyes toward her. Min-jae shot to his feet. Ayanda, what are you doing here? She ignored him. Her eyes were trained on the board. Is this how Kang Group treats its CEO? She asked softly, but her voice carried like thunder. Throwing him to wolves the moment the wind blows? The board members exchanged uneasy looks. CEO cleared his throat. Mrs. Kang, this is an internal matter. Really? She said. Because it looks a lot like cowardice. Someone gasped. She stepped forward. My husband is a man of integrity. If someone forged documents, investigate the forgery, don't drag him through mud to protect your own reputations. Another board member sputtered, with respect. With respect, Ayanda interrupted coolly, you don't know what respect means if this is how you treat the person holding your empire together. A thick, suffocating silence filled the room. Ayanda turned to them one by one. Her eyes were sharp, unshakable, fierce. If you accuse him, she said, then you should be brave enough to face both of us. There was no scream. No theatrics. Just truth. Power. And unwavering loyalty. The same loyalty Min-jae never realized he craved until this moment. Board member CEO swallowed. We need time to re-evaluate before making decisions. That's wise, Ayanda said, her tone clipped. The board members quickly gathered their papers, clearly rattled, and filed out. Behind closed doors. The moment the door closed, Min-jae slumped into a chair, completely drained. Ayanda rushed to him. Are you okay? He stared at her, stunned. Why would you do that? Because I'm your wife, she said firmly. And because you've been carrying everything alone for too long. He swallowed hard. You shouldn't have confronted them. They're powerful. They'll retaliate. Ayanda crossed her arms. Let them. I'm not afraid of men who hide behind whispers. Min-jae stared, confused, grateful, overwhelmed. You risked everything for me, he whispered. She moved closer. Gently. Carefully. Like approaching a wounded thing. No. I stood by you, she said. You don't have to face battles alone just because you're used to it. His breath faltered. Nobody had ever said that to him. No one had ever stood for him, only against him, beside him, or beneath him. But Ayanda stood with him. He sat forward, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. His voice came out rough. I was so scared, he admitted. I thought everyone believed the lies. Even you. Ayanda knelt in front of him, lifting his chin gently with her fingers. I know who you are, Minjae. I see you. Her voice softened. And I believe in you. The words hit him like a warm tide, washing away shame, fear, loneliness. He reached up slowly as though afraid she would vanish if he moved too fast, and brushed a tear from her cheek he hadn't noticed fall. Ayanda. His voice broke just a little. Don't ever leave my side. Her breath caught. Her lips trembled. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. Their hands touched, fingertips first, then palms, then a gentle, lingering clasp. A spark. Warm. Unmistakable. This time Minjae didn't gasp. This time he leaned in slowly, deliberately. Their foreheads met first. A quiet, trembling touch. Their breaths mingled, soft and uneven. Then, with a tenderness that felt like a promise, their lips met. Not rushed. Not hungry. But deep. True. A kiss built from trust, fear, relief, and something beginning to root beneath both their ribs. When they parted, Ayanda rested her forehead against his. We'll get through this, she murmured. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, Minjae believed it. The rain came softly that night. It trailed down the windows of the penthouse in delicate streams, turning the city lights into blurred strokes of gold and white. The world outside felt distant, muted, as though it understood that something important was unfolding inside the quiet apartment. Ayanda sat on the edge of her bed, her fingers lightly tracing the embroidered hem of her night robe. Her heart was steady now, no fear, no hesitation. The events of the past week had changed everything. Once, Minjae had been the cold CO she had married under obligation. Now he was the man whose strength cracked only for her. The man who fought battles alone, until she stepped beside him. The man who kissed her like he was memorizing her soul. And tonight she sensed something shifting once more. A soft knock came at her door. She turned. Come in. The door opened slowly and Minjae stepped inside. He wasn't wearing his usual armor of suits or stoic expression. Tonight he looked real. Soft around the edges. Vulnerable in a way that made Ayanda's breath catch. His hair was damp from a recent shower, falling slightly over his forehead. He wore a simple black sweater and loose pants, but something in the way he carried himself, quiet, steady, almost hesitant, made her chest warm. Ayanda, he said, voice low, can we talk? She nodded. Of course. He walked toward her slowly as though approaching something sacred, and sat beside her on the bed. They were close enough that she could feel the heat of his skin even without touching him. For a moment neither spoke. The rain filled the silence. The unraveling. I've been thinking, he began quietly, about everything you said, everything you've done for me. Ayanda turned toward him, her expression open, patient. You protected me, he continued. In front of my board. My father. The entire company. He swallowed, eyes lowering. No one has ever done that for me in my whole life. Ayanda's heart pinched. Minjae. He looked up, eyes shining, not with tears but with a rawness that made her chest tighten. I thought I had to earn love, he confessed. By being perfect. By being strong. By never failing. A shaky breath. But you stood by me when I was falling apart. When I had nothing to offer. Ayanda reached out and gently placed her hand over his. You don't have to offer me anything, she said softly. I'm here because I choose to be. Minjae stared at their joined hands as though seeing something divine. His voice trembled. I'm afraid, he whispered. Of what? Ayanda asked gently. That you're too good, he murmured. Too warm. Too honest. And I don't know if I deserve you. Ayanda smiled softly, brushing her thumb across his fingers. Minjae, she said, I'm not perfect. I'm human. Just like you. Her voice dropped to a tender whisper. And you deserve someone who sees your heart. I do. He inhaled sharply, like her words had pierced straight into him. The moment that changes everything. Then Ayanda cupped his cheek. It was a simple gesture, gentle, natural. But it unraveled him completely. His breath hitched. His lashes fluttered. He leaned into her touch with slow, hesitant trust. Ayanda, he whispered, voice trembling, why do you make everything feel lighter? Because you don't have to be alone anymore, she answered softly. I'm with you. Something inside him broke open. And before he could stop himself, he reached up and covered her hand with his own. She leaned closer. So did he. Drawn like two magnets that had spent their whole lives being pulled in opposite directions, only to finally meet. Their lips met. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, gentle, warm. But when Ayanda's hand slid to the back of his neck, Minjae exhaled a shaky breath and deepened the kiss slowly, reverently, as though savoring something he'd waited his whole life to taste. It wasn't sharp or hurried. It was a kiss full of emotion, fear, relief, gratitude, longing, and something blooming, new and powerful. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads rested together, breaths mingling in the warm quiet between them. "Ayanda," he whispered, voice breaking, "you feel like—" He stopped, caught between fear and truth. She pulled back just enough to look in his eyes. "Like what?" He swallowed hard. "Like heaven." Ayanda's breath stilled. Not because of the words, but because of the way he said them. Not like a compliment, not like flattery, but like a truth that had lived inside him since the moment he first touched her. Minjae moved a strand of her hair behind her ear with trembling fingers. "You feel like peace," he murmured. "You feel like warmth, like safety, like something I thought I would never have." His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "You feel like heaven, Ayanda?" Her heart swelled, heavy and full. She placed her hand over his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath her palm. "You feel like home?" she whispered back. Something in his gaze softened, melted, transformed. He lifted her hand and pressed it against his cheek, closing his eyes as though memorizing the feeling. "Stay with me tonight," he whispered, not as a demand but as a plea. "Not because of marriage. Not because of tradition. But because I want you near me." Ayanda nodded, voice barely audible. "I'm here." They lay together on the bed, not rushing, not trying to fulfill anyone's expectations, not giving in to pressure or fear. Just two hearts finally aligned. Two souls finding warmth in the storm. Two strangers who were no longer strangers at all. Minjae held her gently, one arm around her waist, the other resting over her hand. Their legs tangled naturally, their breaths synced easily, their bodies found comfort in closeness rather than tension. The rain continued to fall, soft and steady. And as Ayanda drifted to sleep against his chest, Minjae pressed the lightest kiss to her forehead and whispered into her hair. "I love you. I think I'm falling in love with you." Ayanda stirred, eyes half closed, and murmured back, "I know. And I'm falling too." Outside, the storm quieted. Inside, something new began. Love. Real, honest, earned love. Not born from contracts. Not forced by duty. But discovered. Slowly, unexpectedly, beautifully.